We are back and we are live. It is Fight IQ presented by RotoWire MMA. I am your host, the Daily Fantasy Sniper, alongside the co-host and analyst of Fight IQ, Chris Olsen and Sun Tzu. And tonight on deck, we have UFC Hamburg. Our main event is Mauricio Shogun Rua. That's right, he's still around. Shogun Rua taking on Anthony Lionheart Smith. Interesting card. Some more hot takes for you this episode. These guys can tell you why I'm crazy. I'm not as confident as last week, and usually I defer to these two gentlemen, but I had such a good week that I have to rub it in Chris's face a little bit. So, Chris, have you recovered from my hot takes hitting last week?
I just have to tell you, sir, you're not the only one here who picked Barcelos to win. I just have to remind you of that fact. But no,
I don't remember that.
You hit the exacto. I'll give it to you. That's impressive. But I'm gonna get back on the ball this week, so I'm ready to begin.
And as a teaser, guys, we were doing our pre-episode talk here, and me and Chris disagree in a few places. Surprise! So, Joe, how was your week? And are you ready to play mediator yet again? Even though I'm the host, and it seems like you're breaking all the ties.
Well, say it with me. VARIANCE. That is going to be this card. I mean, if I thought last week was a GPP card, this week is even more of a GPP card. On a scale of 1 to 10, there's maybe one fight that I would rate a 7 in terms of confidence in the outcome. Other than that, this is I tweeted out earlier in the week, should I develop a core? For mass entry GPP, should I work on developing a core or should I just spread? It's the latter because I couldn't come up with a core.
Well, an interesting strategy, and if you're going to do it, something I ended up doing last week because it was a GPP card and it worked for me. And I'm still not totally sold on it, but I built a core, but not around. Usually, I build my core around favorites and mix in my underdogs. This, I think, could be a card where you find the underdogs you think have the highest upside and mix in your favorites from there. And if your underdogs hit, you're going to take something down. If not, it's a GPP card.
Well, so far I'm at 85 lineups. Last week I played 115. I'm at 85 lineups.
You're slacking.
Oddly enough, the lineup that hit the nuts for me, winning the $8, I didn't even know that I had it until after the fight, the Norcut fight. I was actually rooting for Zach Otto because I was following all my primaries, and my primary lineup that was the closest to being in the money had Zach Otto in it. So, I'm rooting for Zach Otto. And then Norcut wins the fight. It goes final, and I hit refresh, and I'm like, holy shit, where did that come from? And then I realized I was, I just needed Junior Dos Santos to not score, 93 points. And I was going to tie for first in the $8, which is what happened. So it worked out.
So congratulations on that, and these young fighters, guys. All right. So now that I've gloated for sure, you might want to fade all my picks. But let's get into the picks for this week. I know we have a disagreement on tap, but before we do that, I want to make sure everyone goes to rotowire.com/free. Check out all their usually paid premium content for nothing for 10 days. No credit card required. The MMA stuff is free, but they have stuff for all the daily fantasy sports and season-long football starting. So go in there, check that out. No credit card required. The usual plugs. Follow all of us on Twitter. I'm at the DFS Sniper with one S. Chris is at Real Chris Olsen. Joe is at Sun Tzu. Let's jump in. It is Damian Stasiak, 8,200, taking on one of the many UFC debutantes on this card, Liu Pingyuan. He is 8,000. The odds on this fight, Damian Stasiak is up to a minus 115 favorite. Pingyuan Liu is minus 105. Stasiak's been bet up a little bit. He actually opened as a small underdog at plus 100, which seemed crazy to me because what you can find of Pingyuan Liu, it's not pretty. He can't stop a double leg. He has a little bit of wrestling his own and an overhand. I don't think he's UFC caliber at all. I know people don't like Damian Stasiak, Chris, but he was in close fights with guys like Pedro Munoz. He went 3 rounds with Munoz, took him down twice. Close fight with Brian Kelleher, faded at the end. Kelleher finished him. He's got a win over Davey Grant, which we're going to talk about later in the Manny Bermudez fight. overall, I know Stasiak isn't great, but at least to me, he's a UFC caliber fighter. He has at least one takedown in all of his UFC fights, 9 in his last 4 fights, 10 in his 5 UFC fights. He's 2-3 in the UFC. I think he does enough to get the job done here in 8,200. I'm definitely going to be mixing him in. He's my preferred play. Chris, why do you like Lu Pingyuan so much?
Well, before you paint me as the number 1 Stasiak hater, I will say that I picked him against Davey Grant in that fight. But having said that, I'm not all that impressed with him. It's true. I like the fact that he's rounded out his game a little bit more here. He likes to lean on that single leg. He was getting it in the Davey Grant fight. He wasn't getting it in the Brian Kelleher fight, and that was more or less the difference. Otherwise, he's very much karate-based. He likes that spinning back kick. He'll blitz forward with punching combinations. Good on the ground, of course. Got Davey Grant in the armbar from the guard there. So, probably more from Damian Stasiak than you might think if you just look him up and see that he's a karate stylist. I wouldn't fade our new fighter entirely. Yes, it's true that you can't find much on him, and what you can find is old. But he seems sort of like a jack of all trades, master of none to me. He's got a little bit of everything. He's got a little bit of wrestling. He's got a little bit of pressure striking. He's got a little bit of a submission game. I did see him lock up a triangle in a fight that's probably 5 or 6 years old at this point. I understand that you can't base too much on what you see from those fights, but that also means that other people are probably going to fade him entirely. And in a fight against a guy like Stasiak, who is going to shut down if he gets pressured, we saw that in the Kelleher fight. That's a good thing for us potentially. If everybody stays off him or goes really heavy on Stasiak, we get a guy who is at least aggressive, at least has some power, and at least can mix in some other elements of the game as well. So I would say Stasiak is probably going to win the fight. I don't have enough cojones to actually pick Pingyuan outright. But I will say don't fade him entirely because I don't think he's going to be very highly owned. I think most people would expect him to be more of a 6,900, 7,000 range. So for that reason, I think they're going to stay off him. And I think, Stasiak's tough, so it might be tough to finish him. But I think that an aggressive fighter who can pressure Stasiak could see some results. So I would say mix in accordingly.
Joe, break our first kind of tie. I will say this is the first variance fight of the card, Chris. There's a lot of – I think people are going to be really tempted to overspread their ownership. I think that's going to be a common thing. They're going to want exposure here because they're not confident and really spread themselves too thin. You can't cover all the outcomes in GPP, even playing 150 lineups like Joe. So that's why this is one of those spots where at least they have somewhat of a known commodity here in Stasiak. With that being said, Joe, how do you have this fight?
Okay, so we spent a lot of time already on this fight, so I'll keep it relatively simple. There is both some recency bias and a narrative to support both the line movement and backing Ping in this fight. The recency bias is that we all know that China is Brazil 2.0, right? Because of the recent success of Chinese fighters. That people are willing to take a stab and support, Chinese fighters, despite the fact that there's not a whole lot of tape on them. And what you see is iffy. The narrative is that Ping is actually training with Song Kadong in the U.S. I can't recall the camp off the top of my head. It's whatever camp that Song is training at. Lee has also spent some time at Tiger Muay Thai. So he's actually gotten out of China and spent some time at some top-notch camps. I do disagree with Chris, and I think his ownership will be higher than many people think. I started the week being very, very high on Stasiak. And, with some of the narrative on Ping, I've come a little bit back. I think this is a fight that maybe you want to target a bit in mid-range. I wouldn't go crazy on this fight. It's certainly not a fight that you need to have 100% exposure to. Stasiak does have the better resume. Again, a little bit James Tahuna here in the fact that he has lost to better fighters. you know, but he is the more accomplished UFC fighter. I will pick Stasiak as the winner, but it's not a strong endorsement, and this is not the fight where I have the 7 out of 10 confidence on. So I would play both sides in mass entry GPPs.
God, I hope this next fight is where you have 7 out of 10 confidence. It is Darko Stošić, 9,300, taking on Jeremy Kimball. Then you're going to have to explain this to me at 6,900. The line of this fight, Stošić is a minus 250 favorite. Kimball is plus 210. I've my own podcast and everywhere else that I've talked about this fight, I preface it with, I rate Jeremy Kimball somewhere less than dog shit. I just don't think he's very good. And I'm not including the Dominic Reyes fight. Obviously, Reyes is going to start you. I'm not a believer in Kimball. I don't think he's very good anywhere. Stošić is the protege of Mirko Cro Cop. What I really like about him is his ability to chain wrestle that I've seen on tape. I think his chain wrestling is enough to get it done. I think he's the more powerful striker. Stošić is someone that I'm going to have heavy exposure in. So, Joe, you said no. Why is it not 7 out of 10 confidence? Are you at least picking Darko Stošić?
Oh, yeah. Look, don't get me wrong. I agree with everything you said about Kimball. Shout out to Cody Safrick, who has a in at MMA Labs where Kimball spent some time. Apparently, MMA Labs, the lab had nothing good to say about Kimball. Apparently, and I'm quoting Cody Safrick here. There were days he didn't show up for training. He was lazy. Apparently, he's bounced around at camps. I am with you in that I don't think a whole lot of Kimball. However, he does have power, and I would like to see some fights by Darko against guys who are under 50 years old and have winning records. That is my biggest. This is why he did not get my 7 out of 10 here, although I am picking him to win.
Chris, you going with the big upset here?
Oh, you guys are gonna let me have some fun early here. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm kind of shocked that you guys are so much on our friend Darko here. I'm going with Kimball, and the reason is Joe mentioned some of it. Not yet. Give me a second. Joe mentioned some of it. I mean, a lot of these guys are, 41-year-olds with losing records, and they take one check left hook and it knocks them out. But the other thing is, Darko isn't a bad fighter. He's got powerful leg kicks. He throws in combination. But by consequence of him not fighting everybody, every single fight he's ever had has been at his pace, exactly what he's wanted. He's a slow-paced fighter anyway. He gets the exact kind of fight he wants. Jeremy Kimball is going to put a ton of pressure on him, and he's going to have to answer that question. He's a creative striker. He's a guy who will blitz at you. His takedown defense isn't great, but I don't know if Draco's going to try to take him down. And I think Kimball is going to ask a lot of questions that Darko needs to answer. He might answer them, and that'll be great, but he might not. And if he doesn't, I think Kimball's got the power to knock him out. So I think Kimball is going to be way under-owned, and I appreciate you guys, joining the cause here and getting him under-owned for me. So I'm gonna have exposure to both. Don't get me wrong, but I'll have more Kimball, and I wouldn't be surprised if a knockout comes.
I think you are insane. Like, what MMA skills has he showed you other than a little bit of power? I know Kimball is untested, but dear Lord.
I need to see him. I need to see Darko deal with aggression. I've never seen it. I've never seen him fight anybody, as Joe said, under 40. So, look, pressure and power.
You're not going to see Kimball's aggression. You're going to see Kimball on his back.
Pressure and power can win a lot of low-level MMA fights. And right now, that's what this is, until Darko shows me different. So I'm going with the pressure and the power against the untested, I guess if you want to call him a prospect here.
This is one. I hope we can find some common ground later. Otherwise, I don't even know what to say. I'm looking.
Why? It's more fun this way. I like it better like this.
I guess, but man, this is a rough one. I don't want to call it what I think is your worst take because I've had some bad ones too, but Jeremy Kimball. Team, as Tom Green said in our chat on YouTube, which, by the way, if you're listening to this after the fact, if you subscribe to the RotoWire MMA podcast stream, we record these Friday night. Jump in on the YouTube chat. Tom Green and myself are both anti-neckbeard, so he's not rostering Kimball, nor am I. Moving on, we have Justin Ledet at 8,300, taking on Aleksandar Rakić at 7,900. Oh, the line on this fight before I get into it. Oh, I had Kimball's fight history pulled up. It was depressing. The line of that fight, Aleksandar Rakić is the underdog at plus 105, Justin Ledet minus 125. Interesting for me in that this is the light heavyweight fight that I have little DFS interest in. I think it's going to be a boring stand-up fight. Ledet's a boxer. Has probably one of the best jabs in MMA, which I'm sure everyone has heard from other podcasts over and over again. I think Rakić leg kicks could be a factor in this fight. Overall, I think Rakić wins a close decision, but I think it's really tight. But I don't think either guy scores well for DFS. Chris?
Yeah, I'm going with Rakić here, and the first thing that jumped out to me in this fight is that the old axiom, right, or adage, or whatever you want to say, kickbox the boxer. And I think that's what Rakić is going to do here. I like his pressure. I like his aggressiveness. He's got good body kicks. He's good in the clinch. He's got good leg kicks. And Ledet is Ledet is a guy who, this is reflected in his record. He's basically said as much. He's not interested in finishing. If you remember that Chase Sherman fight, he basically had him dead in the third round. Everybody started booing, and he said something like, "This isn't cockfighting, blah, blah, blah." He is here to get a paycheck, and that's all he wants, and then he's going home. So he's going to let Rakić hang around here. And if you let a powerful kickboxer hang around, the results might not be so good for you. We've seen that Ledet has a chin. We know that he does, but we also know that Ledet is basically a jab and a hook. He doesn't have much in the way of power shots. Surprisingly, he has a decent amount of submissions on his record, but a couple of those just say submission, and they're from 6 or 7 years ago. So I'm not really sure what that's about. We saw the Godbeer takedown and back take, but overall, I think you're right. I think this is going to be a kickboxer versus a boxer, and I'm going to go with the kickboxer to have more tools and get this done.
Joe, Rakić or Ledet?
I'm going to go with Ledet here. Neither one of you guys mentioned it, but this fight is at light heavy and not heavyweight.
That's true.
Ledet weighed into his last fight at over 240. He cut weight by becoming a vegan. My understanding is a vegan. He was walking around at 210, and one of his trainers said, "You got to start eating meat. You're losing weight too fast." I don't know if the weight loss is going to change the way he fights or not. He is a very technical boxer. He probably could take this to the ground and wrestle. I don't necessarily see that happening unless that's a change in strategy. And just to throw it out there, I actually called Ledet by submission in that fight against Goodbeer at plus 700. But I would love to see him take this down. But he is such a technical boxer. I just don't see this fight as scoring very highly if it plays out on the feet, regardless of who wins. At 8.3K, I like it more as a cash play. I'm not crazy about it in GPPs, but I do give the slight nod to Ledet.
I think we're all actually in agreement that fight might not score well, which is weird for a light heavyweight fight.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Manny Bermudez, 9,200, taking on Davey Grant at 7,000. The line on this fight, Manny Bermudez, the line keeps climbing on him. I believe he's at minus 270. Davey Grant, the comeback is plus 230. For me, this is pretty simple. I know Manny Bermudez's stand-up isn't very good, but he's relentless looking for the takedown. Even if they're sloppy, Davey Grant, in my mind, he can't stop a takedown. He's going to end up on his back and probably get subbed out of there. I like Davey Grant. I don't think he gets it done here, and the way Bermudez fights is DraftKings gold to me, so I like Bermudez. Joe?
Yeah, look, he's a one-trick pony. I'm not a huge fan of the Boston fight camps. He's a one-trick pony. He got stung by Albert Morales before he finished him. Grant is a bit better rounded, although Grant is not a super active fighter. He seems to be more involved as a coach than as a fighter. Yes, he's got a win over Chito Vera as a dog, I believe. I don't know if he could beat Chito Vera today. Another fight, which, you know, I see this as a GPP fight. I don't know if I would be comfortable playing Bermudez and Cass simply for the fact that, you know, he has shown that he is susceptible to being struck. Although I will back Bermudez, and I do like him as a target for GPPs.
Chris, how do you have this one?
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of echo what Joe said a bit. Although the fact that he is a one-trick pony kind of sours me on him a little bit. I mean, it's not even though he's a wrestler. His only actual legit takedown in that fight came on some really sloppy wrestling where he was able to get a desperation shot from his knees. He's more like Damian Maia than anything. His game is to connect with you somehow, some way, and get it to the floor. And I think that Davey Grant will keep distance a little better. I did just finish saying that Stasiak was getting single legs on Grant, but I don't think Bermudez is going to execute a single leg here. I think a lot of his ways to get to the ground is going to be what you saw from him in the Morales fight and what you see from Damian Maia, which is, you know, connect with you somehow and try to pull half guard and just try to get on the ground any way you can. The problem with that is I think Grant is an experienced fighter. I think that anybody who fights Manny Bermudez from now on is going to have one thing and one thing only to focus on. Morales bombed on him, hurt him more than once in that fight. I just can't trust it, and I fully accept the fact that he might just take this straight to the ground and get a first round sub, and for that reason, I'm certainly not going to fade him. But I think Davey Grant is going to be under-owned here.
Everyone can't be under-owned, Chris.
In lieu of someone, well, I only said it twice. Well, it's Davey Grant too, so you know. I mean, recency bias and all. You guys know all that. But I really think that you know, people see Bermudez and they see the sub, and it was impressive. It was impressive work, but I mean, he also almost got knocked out about 2 or 3 times. So, you know, I'm going to have some Grant here, and I'm not going to be surprised if he knocks him out. But I'm also going to lean on the first round sub with Bermudez as well.
Davey Grant, by the way, pulled out. This fight was supposed to happen a few months ago. He pulled out with the staph infection. For what it's worth, hasn't fought in a while. Next up, we have. Ooh, did I go out? I think I went out of order before. Yeah, I skipped a fight. Sorry, guys.
Oh, no.
You were following on DraftKings. No. I went to Ledet, Rakić, and then Grant Bermudez. I should have done those in reverse order.
That's
and I
right.
screwed myself up. Next up, we have Narimani at 9,100 taking on Khalid Taha at 7,100. Holy variance, Joe. This is a fight I hate trying to break down, but for GPPs, I think you need a ton of. Khalid Taha is a wild brawler. Narimani came up through Cage Warriors. I think is the better all-around prospect. The problem is with a guy like Taha who's going to brawl, it spells GPP fight, especially with both guys making their debut. Overall, I'm going to lead Narimani because he has more skills to get it done, but Taha with that wild style is not one I'm going to fade. Chris, how do you have it?
Yeah, I'm actually going to lean Taha here, and I'm gonna disagree a little bit. I don't think he's a wild brawler so much. I think he's a decent boxer. He's got good hand speed. He throws in combination. He's got relentless pressure. He's really susceptible to the takedown. That's one of his problems that actually got him subbed out in a fight he was winning in Ryzen either last year or 2 years ago. But you know, as a top controller, he's not bad. He's got good head position. He can lock up positions as a top control grappler. But his bottom game leaves a lot to be desired. Narimani is also going to try to pressure fight. He works the body well. You know, he's a big, imposing figure. He's probably going to have the strength advantage here. but I just sort of favor Taha's hand speed and combination punching. So I'm going to do a slight lean towards Taha, but I agree that this is one that you should target both legs in GPPs.
Joe, this is the GPP week. I think it's a GPP fight. How do you have it?
Actually, I like Narimani a bit in cash. As the only person 9K or higher that I have more confidence in cash would be Tybura. So I like him a bit in cash. Again, Brett chided me on using this comparison, but Narimani has the marquee win over McGregor 2.0, Paddy Pimblett, that everybody was touting as the next Conor, which is a really solid win for him. He's got more experience. He's better rounded. I like him a bit here. I think he's sneaky. He's kind of sliding a bit under the radar, because he is not as flashy as some of the other fighters, in that 9K or higher range. I do like him a bit in cash, although I am really struggling, I should admit, at putting together a cash lineup.
Yeah, I think most people are. It's a weird range. I like in that range for cash. I like Bermudez and Stošić, but I can see an argument for Narimani. I'm just afraid of the style that Taha could bring to this fight.
No, I think you need to use some Taha and GPPs as well. I totally agree.
All right, moving on to one of the fights I'm really looking forward to talking about, because we have Twitter mush, everyone. And Twitter mush has been burning people left and right. It is Emil Meek at 8,400 against Mr. Mush. Bartosz Fabiński at 7,800. Fabiński has become Twitter mush because he marches forward and he looks for takedowns. And Emil Meek was taken down time after time by Kamaru Usman. No one's comparing the grappling of Usman to Fabiński, but it's that style. Meek would defend the first takedown for a few seconds and then jump a guillotine. Hopefully he's learned how to stop a takedown. I don't think Fabiński's are as good. There's also some extracurricular stuff in that Fabiński's been out for 2.5 years. Injuries, USADA, we don't really know. Is he going to be the same? Overall, Fabiński's fine in cash because I think he's going to be the chalk of the week. I like Meek a bit as leverage in tournaments. This is where I'm going to use the Chris adage of I think he's going to be under-owned. I think if this fight is at range for any length of time, Meek gets a knockout. I think he's the better athlete, younger guy, and I got a little bit of leverage. So give me Emil Meek here. But if you're struggling to build a cash lineup as so many people are, if you plug in Fabiński, I think it's going to get you to a lot of 5-on-5s. And if he has any success, it's going to be through the grappling and put up a big score. So that's how I have this fight. Joe?
So we got the Polish Khabib here.
Oh, God, please.
Going up against Emil Meek, who survived against Usman and is now actually training with Usman. I don't know if you guys were aware of that.
I saw the video, yeah.
Actually training with Usman now. Again, I don't know that, a short period of time in training, even with an Usman, is going to yield, stellar results. However, Meek is a physical freak. He looks like he's in shape. He's got good cardio. Going against the guy that's going to be dead chalk because of 16 takedowns in 2 fights against less than stellar UFC opposition. I won't go as far as calling them cans.
No. You will call Gareth McClellan a can on this podcast.
Okay, McClellan is a can. He is a can. At least he's under 40. So yeah, McClellan is the worst fighter to ever don a Nike outfit for UFC. So yeah, I am totally on board with you about using Meek and for GPPs. I wish I knew why the Polish Khabib has been out for nearly 3 years. I mean, but those 16 takedowns, people are going to look at that at 7.8K and say DraftKings gold. 16 takedowns in 2 fights. But again, he doesn't have he doesn't wrestle at the level of Usman. And Meek survived 3 rounds with Usman. So, look, I'm going to pick Meek to win. It's not, again, this is not my 7 out of 10 fight either. I'm going to pick Meek to win here. I think that you should probably have some exposure to both sides. I think Meek and GPPs and Fabińsk and cash would probably not be the worst strategy in the world to pursue. However, I don't see Fabińsk as the cash lock sub 8K fighter that I think a lot of people do.
All right, Joe, me and you agree, so that means Chris, take it away.
I just to hammer this point home. When was the last time you saw a fighter get 2 3-round decision wins and score 100 points or better in both of them? That's crazy.
Yeah. When's the last time the DraftKings scored 2 regional MMA fights?
Yeah.
No. But
when was the last time you saw Jessica Aguilar get 128 significant strikes?
Oh, don't start, please. I'll have a seizure on this friggin' podcast. Let's Fight Metric. If anybody from Fight Metric is listening, shove it. And I'm sorry, you know what? If Jake gives me a talking to after this, because RotoWire and Fight Metric are any way connected, I'll take it. But Fight Metric, you are garbage.
I mean, sorry, Chris. My God, how do you give a fighter credit for more strikes than significant strikes than she actually threw? I'll never understand that.
All right,
I don't know what you guys are talking about. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Focus. Well, let's all focus. Okay.
I picked her to win. I had her to win.
Yeah. Chris, Fabińsk, Meek.
All right. Well, if everybody's done with their tirades, I was gonna say, poor Emil Meek. I mean, he had to defend some takedowns from Jordan Mean in that fight. Then he fights Usman. Now he's taking this fight. I mean, the guy has wrestling defense coming out his ears. I should think, but I really think that a lot of Emil Meek's get-ups, because he does manage to stop the first shot and get up sometimes, and it requires him being dragged back to the ground. A lot of it is him just he-manning his way back up, because as you guys mentioned, he is sort of chiseled out of rock. He's very strong. I think he might be able to do that here and maybe get some more separation as a result. The thing about Fabińsk is, everything is very much like, he's not trying to fool you. He throws one strike and then he tries to get you against the fence. That's all he does. It's very rote. Once he gets you to the ground, he's actually got some really good ground and pound. He's heavy on top, or he can be. But this is a tough one to call. Part of me just sees Meek knowing that he's tired of getting taken down by these wrestlers. As Joe alluded to, he's training with Usman now, so he angles off and knocks him out. I can totally see that happening, or he gets stuck on bottom. But I'm going to lean towards Meek staying on his feet and getting that knockout. But otherwise, I totally agree with what you guys say. You got to look at him in cash because of the points he can generate. I mean, you got to look at him in tournaments because of the points he can generate as well. But as far as who's the better put together fighter, it's Meek, so that's where I'm going.
All right, next up, a fight that I want to be really, really clear about. You can pull my lineups. You can sort through them on Saturday. I will have 0 goddamn shares of this fight.
Wow.
Nick Hein at 8,500, taking on Damir Hadžović at 7,700. I'm going to take Nick Hein because I think he's a little better everywhere. But in his UFC wins, he scored 65, 58, 53 DraftKings points. In the 53-point win, he did have 2 takedowns. That's ultimately where I think he has success here, because Hadžović can't stop a takedown. He should be 0-3 in the UFC. He got a 3rd-round knockout over Marcin Held. I know the takedowns of Held and Alan Patrick are better than what he'll face against Nick Hein, but Nick Hein fighting at home, I think it's just the all-around better prospect here. I'll take Nick Hein to win, and this is the fight I'll probably go make a sandwich. Chris?
That's good. We should do that once a card, the sandwich fight. That's a good one. But, it would definitely be this one, I think. I don't know. I just can't really pick Nick Hein to win a fight. He has so much trouble finding range in general. He's the ultimate one heavy punch counter striker. He just doesn't, as you alluded to by mentioning his scoring, he just doesn't do a lot. I think I actually looked at the Fight Metric because I know he does have that judo. I think it's under 1 takedown per 15 minutes, so I wouldn't rely on that either. At least Hadžović is going to come forward. At least he's going to try to throw strikes and combinations. I don't think Nick Hein is going to do something like hit a reactive double on him. If he gets caught. We saw in the Marcin fight, he threw a leg kick and he got countered by an overhand. That could happen here, I suppose, but otherwise, in a fight like this, I'm just happy to take the dog. It's going to be slow moving. It's going to, Damir's going to have a lot of time to work. I think he could out-volume him here. I think he could overwhelm him here. And in a fight like this, where it's just going to be where the higher-priced guy is just going to be so slow and inactive, I'm going to take the dog and see what I get.
All right, Joe, in your 80 lineups, how much of this, what I think is impending disaster, do you have?
I would play Hein, and I would consider Hein as a cash play potentially, and Damir in GPPs, but I have very little of this fight overall.
We agree. Who are you picking to win?
Hein.
All right, let's move on to a fight that I think I am opposite of the public opinion on. We have Marc Diakiese, 8,900, taking on Nasrat Haqparast at 7,300. I think Haqparast is a dog who's getting a lot of love here. Yes, he looks just like Kelvin Gastelum, which is weird. Looked okay against Marcin held. Young prospect, well-rounded, but I think ultimately Diakiese is the better prospect, but people are down on him because he's lost 2 fights in a row. He's lost to Dan Hooker, and he's lost to Drakkar Klose. That knockout against Teemu Packalén actually had him getting away from his wrestling, and that's where I think he's going to have success in this fight. I think he's the more explosive athlete. He has the power wrestling, which I like on DraftKings. I think he'll be able to wrestle Haqparast down and get a decision that way. I think Haqparast will be the more popular of the two. I'm not going to fade him because he is live in this fight. It is 2 young fighters, but overall, I like Diakiese. Joe?
Okay, so I think this is a great fight to target for GPPs. I like that Haqparast has spent some time at TriStar for this camp. I like that he spent some time, I believe, at Kings. At least he's getting, training. He's young. I think that Diakiese can get frustrated. Diakiese, however, it is not a very strong pick, but I am going to take the dog here. I believe, there's some value in the dog, although I'm pretty equally weighted in mass entry GPPs in this fight. So you could easily convince me that Diakiese is the better play. But I'm pretty equally weighted. I'm just going to, for selection purposes, I'm going to take the dog.
Chris, how about you?
To get it out of the way, I have to say that I've never been a Diakiese fan. For much the same reason that I've never been a Lando Venata fan. I think a lot of these style over substance guys, they can produce big time knockouts that are highlight grabbing, and they get you a lot of points or whatever. But I think that a lot of times when they run into athletic, technical strikers, they just get beat. And I think that's what you're going to see here. I actually like Haqparast quite a bit. I think he's got good, solid straight punches. He's got power. He can wrestle too. He has wrestling in his back pocket if he wants to game plan that way. I don't know if he will. I know that Diakiese has some wrestling too. He used it in that the Frankie Perez fight after he was down on the cards, and that was good, to see him come back from a little adversity. But Diakiese strikes me as a fighter where, if you can get past the first minute and a half, you got a good chance of winning. He's going to throw all his Ryu spinning kicks at you, and then if you can fade it and get into your own pace and rhythm and press the action, get out of range of those kicks, which I think Haqparast can do. I think he's very beatable, and I think Haqparast will beat him. And I actually have a pretty strong lean towards him in this fight.
Chris, you like so many underdogs that is ridiculous this week.
I know. That's not that really wasn't planned on this card, but you got to go with what you feel and die on the sword, which I have done many times and will do many times in the future.
Speaking of dying on the sword, it's my turn. Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts, 9,400, taking on David Zawada at 6,800. The odds on this fight, which I've skipped the last couple of fights, I apologize, guys. Diakiese, by the way, to backtrack for a second, Diakiese's minus 170, Haqparast is plus 150. This fight, Danny Roberts minus 360, the biggest favorite on the card. Zawada is plus 300. I have a bet on this fight. I think it's half a unit on David Zawada to win by KO, TKO at plus 615. Look, if I'm wrong on Zawada, fine. He's the least expensive fighter on the card. I'm going to have him a decent amount in GPPs. I'll be overweight, but I'll have plenty of live lineups. If I decide to plug him in cash, it means I could pay up elsewhere. I don't think it's the worst strategy this week. Danny Roberts, though, in my mind, to be on the optimal lineup at 9,400, unless, like Chris is thinking, 4 or 5 dogs win, he needs a first-round finish. What I've seen on Zawada, the dude is tough. He was going to get a UFC call. He's been in KSW for a while. He's an okay fighter. I'm not going to go say he's a great fighter. Danny Roberts is better technically. But what I can say about Zawada is he's tough. I think he drags this into deep waters. He is taking the fight on short notice. He could flame out there. But we have seen Roberts knocked out by Mike Perry and Nordine Taleb. And people, I think, are high on him after a win over Olivier Enkamp, which Enkamp, I don't think he's still in the UFC anymore. He needed to go back to the regional scene. So this is where I'm finding my salary saving this week. If I'm wrong, for the reasons I mentioned, I don't think it'll kill me, but I'll take David Zawada. Chris, let me have it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you know what it's like to feel like the weirdo for once. But this is my Jeremy Kimball. I don't get this one. I think that Roberts is pretty much better everywhere. From what I've seen of Zawada, because tracking down tape is a little difficult, not quite as difficult as some of the other fighters earlier in the card, but I just think he's very hittable. I think that Roberts has very clean, very hard striking. He's got good body kicks. He can grapple a little bit. He can wrestle a little bit. And I just think that this is going to be way too much. Even if it wasn't short notice, I would be picking Roberts. The fact that it is short notice, I just can't I can't go anywhere but Roberts in this fight. So this is one where I'm going to join the rest of society here and have a lot of the favorite in the fold, which probably means that he will lose. But I'm gonna stack up on Roberts. I've always liked him as a fighter. He leaves his chin out there sometimes to get caught. I understand that completely, but I got to go with the better fighter here. And in this case, who I believe is the way better fighter, and I think that's Roberts.
Joe, I'm assuming you're not on my side in this one, but I'll be okay with it. But
I pretty much agree with everything Chris said. It's, I just don't see this guy as being better or even in the same league as either of the fighters who finished Roberts. I mean, he's certainly not, as good as Mike Perry, who would destroy him. He's certainly not as good as Nordine Taleb. Now, Nordine Taleb finishing Roberts was a little surprising because he's more of a points fighter. But I still think that he is just leagues better than this guy. The short notice aspect of it, the fact that I think Roberts is better everywhere to Chris's point. Look, I would never bet him at minus 360. I just don't see him as a minus 360 type of fighter. However, for DraftKings, if you're putting together a lineup where you're looking for finishers, I certainly see putting Roberts in that lineup. I do think you should probably have a few shares of the dog in case he does connect, but I would be fairly surprised if he lost. This is also, by the way, not my 7 out of 10 confidence level fight. This is probably a 6.9, but because of the fact that Roberts could be susceptible to getting hit, but I do like Roberts a fair amount here.
All right, moving on. Marcin Tybura, 9,000, taking on Stefan Struve, 7,200. Struve is the skyscraper who is also super unreliable, also not very active. It is a heavyweight fight, so we'll have a little of both sides. But overall, I do think Tybura, as you guys were saying in the last fight, Tybura is the one who's a little better everywhere as long as he can find his way inside. He can grapple, just has to avoid the long libs and submissions on the ground. Overall, I think Tybura gets this one done. Doesn't score incredibly highly, but I actually think he's relatively safe. So I'll take Marcin Tybura. Joe?
Okay, so this is my 7 out of 10. Tybura, I mean, the takedown machine and elite wrestler that we all know Andrei Arlovski to be, took down Struve 4 times. I was shocked. I have to believe that Struve is a shot fighter here. I don't think Tybura is a world beater, but I think he is an extremely safe play on this card. He will get his takedowns. Struve has never, ever been a fighter who's fought at range. He's been finished way too many times. He has admittedly had anxiety issues going into fights. Again, I don't know what he's going to score, which is why I'm a little hesitant to say that he's a must play in GPPs, but I do think he should be a core component of a cash lineup, and that is Tybura.
Chris?
Yeah, hard to disagree here. Look, Struve's got his good kicks. If he can get on top, in a grappling situation, he can make something happen. But other than that, as Joe said, he doesn't have a jab, which is amazing for how big he is. He has the tall man defense where he just sort of leans his head back and backs up when he come in, which can get you trapped against the fence and overwhelmed and knocked out. And the takedowns that Tybura likes, to Joe's point, are the same ones that Arlovski was hitting, those double underhook clinch strip takedowns. So I would imagine that he's going to get a few of those. He's going to be quite a bit faster than Struve here, I think. He's going to be he's got those nice head kicks that he likes to land. He likes to throw those front kicks to the body and to the leg, which I think could really wreak havoc on the taller guy. So, yeah, I like Marcin Tybura pretty much everywhere, but I haven't said it in a couple of fights, Sean, so please permit me. I think Struve is going to be really underowned. I don't think anybody's going to have him because of the recency bias, and it's duly earned. That I wouldn't even call it a bias. I would call it looking at the evidence and taking it where it leads you. But nevertheless, it is a heavyweight fight. We do have a guy who can finish on the ground and connect with a head kick or two. So if you want to sprinkle in a tiny smear, like a little sprinkle of Struve, I wouldn't hate it. But otherwise, yeah, Tybura's got to be the main play here.
I will tell you that in mass entry GPPs, to support Sean's point that no one is really going to be underowned here, I have 17% Struve in and I don't like him all that much. But, I think you really got a spread here. I have 17% Struve in mass entry GPPs.
My guess will be that overall he's going to be a little less than that, but we'll see.
We have 3 fights left, but first I'm going to throw out a challenge, and we can put a small amount of money in the line for it. We can work it out afterwards. We'll announce it on Twitter. The $8 big GPP, a ownership projection contest between me and you. We'll come up with a range, project everyone's ownership. If you get within plus or minus 3% or whatever we decide, you count it as getting a fighter right. Most fighter rights wins, and we'll figure it out.
I'm horrible at this. You might as well just take my money now.
Yes, so am I, quite frankly.
But I'm challenging Chris to it just because if everyone's going to be underowned, freaking, you're not going to have enough money out. You're not going to have enough percentage out there.
Well, relative to where you would think they would be owned is kind of what I mean when I say that.
That's why I want to, even if there's no money, please at some point just post your projected ownerships.
Okay. I will. I'll. You know me. I'm never shy about being wrong about pretty much everything. I bear my soul on this pod, so I have no problem putting it out there. You got it. You'll get it.
Looking at the chat, by the way, I'm going to guess this is Nancy MMA 1. I could be saying that way wrong, but says Tybura has some of the most flexible hips he's ever seen at heavyweight. I agree with that. The dude is oddly athletic for a heavyweight. And he also said that 17% Struve has to be overweight to the field. I actually think that's about field weight.
I would agree. I agree.
Yeah, I think that's right on the nose. Next up, Abu Azaitar, 8,800, taking on Vitor Miranda at 7,400. The odds on this fight is Azaitar is a newcomer, minus 190, Miranda plus 165. Well, look, the problem is Vitor's old, and he has one round of gas, and then when it's gone, it's gone. We'll let Joe talk about Azatar's weird connections to the German mafia that I've heard about.
Oh, I don't know that. That's a narrative I don't have.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's written that somewhere. Yeah, he's got some weird unknown connections to the German mafia. So I mean, when I see that, my first thought is this dude going to take a dive? Like, either way, I'm not playing him in cash. I think it's the GPP fight because Miranda's first round knockout or bust. But I do think Azatar is the better fighter. Like I said, you just got to get through the first 5 minutes. He's okay everywhere. So I'll take Azatar, but not a fight I'm looking forward to in cash. Chris?
Yeah, I hate to go with the dog again here, but I don't know if I am completely. Look, the way I'm looking at this fight is if Azatar, because we saw in Miranda's fight with Marvin Vettori, he had trouble with Marvin's hand speed. He had trouble with Marvin's pressure. And Abu Azatari has hand speed. And if he does pressure, I think that Miranda's going to have the same problems. But we've also seen him sort of just hang out and let his opponent dictate where the fight takes place. And if that happens, and if Miranda has the time to set up all the thunderous kicks that he throws, he's got good leg, body, and head kicks. I think that Miranda could really get a lot of work done here. I think it's an IQ test for the new fighter here. If he pressures and comes forward and negates those leg kicks and those kicks in general, I think he wins pretty easily. If he doesn't and he gives Miranda space to work, I think it could be interesting. I think we could be potentially looking at a knockout here. So take that for what it's worth. My 15th dog play of the night, I think, for those of you playing at home. But I think this is a close fight too, and I could see a stoppage either way.
All right, just adding in, Joe, this will be going to you. Auto Roadrunner in the chat has a little more off the top of the head knowledge on this. The rumor is that he threw gasoline on a guy and stole his Ferrari when he was 15. He called it kid stuff. WTF. That's about accurate there. So, yeah, on that note, Abu Azatar or Vitor Miranda?
Wow. If I was going to, and I have no plans to actually straight bet up this card, I would be tempted. There's currently plus money offered on does not go the distance on this fight. I would take.
Really?
Yeah, it's plus 100. It's minus 130 that the fight goes 3 rounds. So I would be very tempted to make a wager on the doesn't go 3 rounds in this fight. I see Miranda as a 7 to 9 minute fighter here. And I think for those 7 to 9 minutes, he should have superiority as the veteran and having faced, UFC competition before. God, I don't really want to make a pick in this fight. I don't really like either side, but I will, just because I know very little about his opponent here, I will take Miranda.
Just, I looked at my bets yesterday and made one more a little earlier, and I somehow missed that line. I'm absolutely going to go put at least a unit on that. That is a really good line for that.
Yeah,
so
I like that. That's the only play that really jumped out at me.
I have quite a few I like in this card, but this is a DFS podcast, and let's move to the main event where we have some thoughts in our chat. Continuing, it is Glover Teixeira at 8,600, taking on Corey Anderson at 7,600. The odds on this fight, Glover Teixeira is a minus 155 favorite. The comeback on Corey Anderson is plus 135. Auto Roadrunner asks, is Glover better in the clinch? And Tom Green says that Anderson's glass jaw is gonna break. That is the concern with Corey Anderson. Glover's getting up there, guys, and I like what I've seen from Anderson. The big worry, of course, is the chin, so thank God he's cheap. He showed last time he can fight to a game plan against Patrick Cummings. He looked good against OSP, or he fought to a game plan against OSP and got caught in the third round. I don't think Teixeira is as dangerous on the feet as OSP. The problem is that Glover has some power and has good counter wrestling. Overall, though, I think Anderson gets this done with some relentless wrestling, gets a couple takedowns, and wins a close decision. Glover also took a ton of damage against Alexander Gustafsson. I just think Anderson's path to victory through the takedowns, while he's not going to have an easy time of it, that's the way I see this fight going. I just like Anderson a little bit more everywhere as the younger fighter who's better in the wrestling department. The worry, absolutely, Tom, is the chin. Like, absolutely terrifying that he could get knocked out. But that being said, the pick here is still Anderson. Joe?
So I was at Anderson's last fight in Atlantic City, and it was super impressive. However, Cummings he knew exactly what Cummings was going to throw at him, right? There was no surprise, the Cummings game, and Cummings is a lower level fighter, in my opinion. One who I believe Teixeira just dominated when they fought as well. It was an equally dominating fight. Cummings being the ex-barista. This is really a hard one for me because part of me would like to say, okay, Anderson's rounded the corner. He's going to fight a lot smarter. In the OSP fight, all he had to do was keep away from OSP for 5 minutes, and he had that fight won. And we've seen OSP just win fights that he had no business winning and look better than anyone thought he could have been. 2 years ago, hands down, I love Teixeira. And this is a tough one for me. I don't even know if I could say this would be a great fight to target for GPPs, because if it goes to a 3-round decision, yes, there'll be some takedowns, but I don't know who's going to be dominant. I think you should probably use both fighters. I'm going to pick Teixeira. I'm going to go with the veteran here. Again, I think the recency bias and the price is going to make Anderson very, very popular. I think Teixeira is better. I think he could outstrike him. Although an Anderson win would not surprise me here. So I would say have exposure to both sides, but my pick is going to be Teixeira.
Chris, what do you got?
Yeah, guys, I swear to God, I'm not trying to pick every dog, but I just think that
$4,000 left over.
Yeah. I know this is. I'm gonna win with the most money left on the table ever. It's gonna be epic. I'll post it up for you guys. But I really think that Glover Teixeira kind of scares me. Even in the last fight that he won, he was getting boxed up by Serkinov until, in fact, the last 2 fights, he wasn't exactly getting boxed up by Jared Cannonier. Wasn't getting dominated in the same way. But in both fights, when those fights were on the feet, he was getting cracked. And he had to lean on his takedown game very heavily to win those fights. And then once he had Serkinov on the ground, of course, he let his jiu-jitsu take over. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that to Corey Anderson. And to Joe's point, I too thought the Cummins performance was very impressive. I liked that we saw some creative striking. We saw some elbows from the clinch. We saw knees up the middle. And that could come into play against Glover, who tends to dip his head, as a lot of boxers do. But yeah, I'm kind of like Joe in that I'm always looking for Anderson to turn the corner. I thought it happened after the Sean O'Connell fight because he was more aggressive. That wasn't really the case. Now I think it's probably happening again. I love the aggressiveness and I love the creative striking. And Glover has just been looking slow lately. I think Anderson's going to be faster. I would push back only a little bit on the idea that his chin is totally gone. Only because I think that, anybody gets knocked out by that OSP head kick. Nobody withstands that. You might say that the check left hook from Jimmy Mano was a little questionable. That's fine. But do I think he's going to blow up when he gets hit on the chin? I don't really think that. He got hit pretty hard by Patrick Cummins, and say what you will about him, the one thing he does do is hit pretty hard. So I'm not overly worried about that. To answer our chat question, I think one of the best places that Glover has this fight standing is in the clinch. He likes to throw those tight hooks from the clinch in close range. So Anderson would do well to keep his distance. But if he can do that, I sort of expect him to put on a performance here. And I hope he does, because my card is going to be him and about 9 other dogs, it seems like.
Well, let's see if we can make it 10 as we move to the main event. Anthony Lionheart Smith, 8,700, taking on Mauricio Shogun Hua, 7,500. I jabbed at Hua in the open, but he is a legend of MMA. He's down to fighting about once a year. He is on a 3-fight win streak. Corey Anderson, though, that fight is anywhere but Brazil. Anderson wins that fight. I have no idea how Hua got the nod. I rewatched it. Still don't get it. Yeah, I did. Dave in chat said the Cummins hits really hard. Doesn't know about that. Just to backtrack, I think that the one thing Cummins does is wrestling, but they are 205ers. And Anderson's, your point about Anderson's chin looking worse than it is from 2 straight knockouts, I do get. But
I do agree that Cummins hits hard when his body hits the octagon floor.
Did I put a really in there? If I did, I didn't mean to. He hits hard. Can we say hard without the modifier? Hard.
He's a pro fighter. All right, sorry.
Okay. Fair enough.
Backing into the main event, Shogun Hua, 3-fight winning streak, should be alternating wins and losses. Taking on Anthony Smith, who went up to 205, looked good at 205, not in the win over Rashad Evans. Yes, he looked good in it, but just how his body looked. He was clearly cutting too much to make 185. We could have the weight class conversation another day. That being said, he's got wins over Hector Lombard, loss over, he got starched by Thiago Santos. It comes down to, I think a lot of people are picking with their heart on this one, and Mauricio Shogun Hua. Well, you heard it last time. I'm not the biggest fan of Anthony Smith. People are yelling Shogun in chat. Look, he's an old fighter. The game has kind of passed him by. He's not going to knock out Anthony Smith, I don't think. I think Smith can keep the pressure on him. I think this fight likely ends somewhere in the 3rd or 4th round. I think these guys will stand and trade. Overall, I give it to Anthony Smith just being the more well-rounded fighter at this point in his career, less damage. I like Anthony Smith here, but I'm having a hard time reading this fight, partially because, like everyone, I am a Shogun Hua fan. I'll take Anthony Smith, but I'm hoping in the next 48 hours I get, or 36 hours, I get some more clarity. Tom Green, you know what? This is a really good way to put it. Anthony Smith probably is losing this fight until he wins it. I could see him losing slightly on the feet, and at some point he just takes over and finishes Shogun. I really like that thought. Chris, how do you have our main event?
Well, yeah, I mean that's basically the blueprint for Anthony Smith wins, I think. But I think Shogun doesn't get enough credit as being a good counterpuncher. I think he's still a really good counterpuncher. I think we've seen that in a lot of his fights now. The Volante fight, the Anderson fight too, where he had him hurt at the end of the 1st round, had him wobbled. I do think it's gonna be a bit tough for him, to get inside on the frame of Anderson. Lionheart Smith, Anthony Smith. There you go. But I also think that Anthony Smith isn't the cleanest striker in the world. He'll keep range sometimes. We saw that well in the Elvis Matopchik fight. But the other big thing that we need to mention is that he gets taken down by pretty much anybody who wants to take him down. And we've seen Shogun work a wrestling game. He's still got ferocious ground and pound. That could very well be a path to victory, a game plan for Shogun to take. If that does happen, we have to be worried about him gassing. So that's another aspect. We know that Anthony Smith is going to be there till the end of the fight. Ultimately, I think what probably happens is Anthony Smith wears him down with body kicks and keeps him on the end of his range. But if Shogun employs a wrestling game and hits a hard counter or two to change the momentum of some of the rounds, I don't think this is an unwinnable fight for Shogun. I think he's a live dog.
Joe, main event time.
Okay, so if 2 years ago I put up a Twitter poll asking what would be more likely, Anthony Smith, main eventing, or Anthony Smith being out of the UFC, I would say it would be 9-1 Anthony Smith out of the UFC. The level of competition that he's faced has been less than stellar. Lionheart is a great nickname for him because I think you and Chris both alluded to the fact that he has made his living in the UFC by hanging around, right? By outlasting guys who got the better of him. I think this is a very winnable fight for Hu as well. I'm a little concerned about the notice, the fact that he's flying to Germany. I don't know how many times Smith has fought outside of the country. I know he's got a big resume, so I'm assuming he's fought outside of the country before. I think this fight is an excellent fight to target for GPPs. The inside the distance prop is off the charts. I just, look, I'm going to pick Anthony Smith to win just simply because I do think that the longer the fight goes, the advantage is going to shift over to him. And he's got, I think, the ability to take a punch better than Shogun does. But I do think you should have shares of both guys. This is a great fight to target in GPPs. I will pick Smith as the winner.
All right, guys, it is hot take time. We've actually been, it seems like one of us has been hitting the last few weeks. I think last week 2 people hit. So let's see if we can continue it. I, though, am going to make this really hard. So one of you guys needs to come through because I'm going to stay on brand. I'm going to continue my crazy non-societal pick here. I got David Zawada to break the slate. He is going to, I'm picking him to knock out Danny Roberts. And if you don't have some, no Zawada, no money.
Well, he'll definitely break my heart if that happens, but I'm still not so sure. But as far as my hot take,
it's risky. Got to take risks here.
I don't know anything about that on this card. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm Mr. Button Up over here. But I will stick with my underdog theme for my hot take. I will say the winning lineup will have more than $500 left on it.
Not hot. That's not hot.
1,000.
It's got to be 1,000.
All right, 1,000 then.
Okay.
All right. That's. I thought you were going to say like 1,500. Like we've seen that before, but I'll give you 1,000. 1,000 is a hefty amount. Joe, hot take for us?
Okay, so my hot take is that that Kevin Gastelum's doppelganger is going to not only get the win but get the finish, giving Diakiese his 3rd consecutive loss.
Oh, see, that would break my heart. So it's an interesting week for hot takes here. As we got for UFC Hamburg, guys, remember to go check out rotowire.com/free. 10-day free trial, no credit card required for all their premium content. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, RotoWire MMA. This is Fight IQ. We will be back next week for a card that I'm really excited for. It is Alvarez Poirier 2 from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So that's Fight IQ this week, guys. Good luck in your contest, and hopefully some of these crazy picks come through, and one of our listeners, followers, make some money. So thanks, guys. I'll talk to you next week.
Out. I am starving.